So my name is Amruta Gawde. I'm currently working as a Director of Product Management for Workforce Identity at Simeo. I'm based in Bangalore in India, and I have been in information security for close to 14 and a half years now. I think right out of my college, and that's why it's a domain that is very close to my heart. Primarily in the field of identity and access management and a little bit of application security. I also believe I started into this field when there were a handful of women around me. So it feels amazing to see a global event, which is curated for women in identity, conducted by women in information security, rather. Um, the topic that we are going to talk about is mitigating insider threats through identity and access management. And the reason why I chose this topic is because even after years in identity and access management, I still find myself convincing people that identity and access management falls within the parameters of information security, and it's not just a tool for automating or helping help desk administrators reset passwords in a better fashion, right? So that's the attempt. The way I have structured the session is we want to take a look at some of the insider threat stats and why and how insider threats, and then deep dive into some examples of insider threats and how IAM can help you address those insider threats, right? We won't go in the technical details of IAM as a domain overall, because that takes way beyond 45 minutes, right? But I will definitely try to give you guys a new perspective towards insider threats through the lens of IAM, right? With that, insider threats, assuming most of the audience here is from the cybersecurity background, the 101 of insider threats is basically anything that is caused from within the organization, right? Any kind of security incident that is caused from within the organization. And when we take a look at the stats of the insider threats, close to 50 to 70% of the security incidents that are caused today are caused as a result of insider threats, right? And that's an increase of 47% from 2018. There is an increase of 31% since 2018 in the monetary impact that is caused by the insider threats. And that amounts to about 11.5 million as the average cost of each insider threat incident, right? Those numbers are pretty significant. In fact, there was a study that was done by US Security Exchange and a corporation that basically revealed that around 90 public organizations during this part of the survey amounted to about 100 million of cost of insider threat as breach, right? So 11.5 million definitely requires us to take a look at the insider threats more seriously, right? I want to take a step back and look at what insider is. It might feel like, basics, but let's spend a little bit more time into deep diving into this, right? NIST says that insider is any entity, either human or non-human, that can cause that has authorized access and that can cause harm or damage in various forms to the information system or organizational assets, right? Now, what are the different types of insiders that you have? There are the obvious ones, which are the malicious insiders. Imagine a disgruntled employee or someone who wants to steal the organization data and basically make a quick buck, right? So those are the obvious ones who want to intentionally abuse the privileges that they have in the organization. Then there are the imposters, right? These are not the malicious insider. These are the regular insiders, but the credentials have been stolen and identity has been stolen and somebody is acting on behalf of them using their credentials, right? And then there are the negligent insiders, right? Negligent insiders could be somebody like us, like security administrators, It could be IT administrators, or it could be any of the employee, any of the contractor, any user, any device that has access to the organizational assets and has privileges that can cause damage, but are not aware that the actions that they are taking or are making an error and that is causing a damage or that is causing a security incident for the organization, right? Something as simple as an employee forwarding a sensitive information or a confidential email out to a wrong email ID, right? Which is not even intentional, but that can cause reputation damage, that can cause brand damage, and so on and so forth, right? When you look at actually the numbers, it may seem like, hey, if I have the key to the kingdom, I'm already inside the organization, and I have the intention, the malicious insider should be the ones who are causing the maximum damage. But you'll be surprised to see that today the majority of the incident breaches caused by insider threats are caused due to the negligent insider, and that forms whopping 61%. And hence we feel that it's time that we go beyond the perimeter security, we go beyond IDS, IPS, firewalls, vulnerability assessment, and start looking at security inward, right? Start ensuring that we are not having a blind trust on our employees or on our contractors, and we are, providing the same amount of protection when an insider is accessing the organizational asset versus what we do when we are looking at it from an external perspective, right? The increasing digitization the thing. So if you look at the traditional threat actors, right, who are those? They are like regular employees. Again, as I give you an example, they may not cause a lot of damage because they probably don't have a lot of access, but they can still cause a damage. The critical ones are those who have administrative or privileged accesses, right? Your system administrators, your database administrators, your application developers, SharePoint administrators, AWS application admins, and so on and so forth. They have the key to the kingdom. If their identity is compromised, you basically don't even have to put in any effort to cause any further damage, right? It's the easiest access and can cause the maximum impact. And then there are the privileged business users who may not be able to, let's say, modify or delete a database or cause a threat to the integrity of the data. However, they still have access to probably the most confidential, most sensitive data of the organization. And if somebody steals their identity, you basically are giving access to that, resulting into, a chain of events such as reputation, brand damage, financial losses, and so on and so forth. Now, in the new world, there are additional actors, right? You have the IoT devices. In a hospital, you may have medical devices that are accessing patient record, right? We are going RPA, bots, and DevOps way. These things are basically non-human entities or non-human programs that are accessing your deployments, that are accessing your databases, your code bases, and so on and so forth, which is a privileged access again. And they're not even human, so you can't even do awareness and tell them that, hey, don't do this, right? So how do you ensure that you're protected from these technical and non-human entities? The other things that are changing is the threat landscape, right? Traditionally, you probably were restricted within intranet and corporate VPN. You were required to use, let's say, the company's laptops or the company's desktops only. You had fixed working hours, fixed locations, and there were data centers, right? It was a very, very traditional, very restricted landscape. But now, recently, with the whole pandemic happening, where we are pushed to is suddenly a lot of organizations which have never had their employees or their contractors working from anywhere but a white room, which is a restricted area within the company, to now suddenly working remotely, forced to work remotely from various locations, maybe allow access to the organizational assets over the internet, over even their mobile devices, right? So, and we had to cope up to this because obviously the business continuity was an important part. So that required, or that pushed it to be anytime, any device, any content, anywhere kind of situation, and has actually given rise to the two buzzwords that you guys must all be hearing: zero trust and passwordless. Two contrasting concepts. Zero trust, basically we are saying trust no one, right? Because now the landscape is so dynamic that you just cannot trust anyone, anything, any access. Just validate, revalidate, continuous authentication, continuous monitoring, right? At the same time, there are a lot of employees or a lot of remote workers who have never been in this situation, who have never had any experience of working remotely, and may not be most comfortable in authenticating, re-authenticating, biometrics and passwords and tokens and so on and so forth, that the need for going passwordless and making their user experience better is also a big demand now, right? And as you can see, they are completely contradictory to each other, but we need to achieve them. Other thing that a factor to look at before we even jump into the IAM paradigm, and I'm sure you guys are like, when are we going to talk about IAM, is the insider threats are very difficult to detect. The reason being, you're already inside the organization. You've crossed the door, you've unlocked the door, you're already inside the organization. Rather, somebody has opened the door for you, right? Left it wide open, welcomed you inside with the ID card, with the access token. And now it's just a matter of you using your accesses, right? And it might be something that you are already authorized. So it makes it very difficult to detect them. And I just want to go over some of the examples which will make this even more clearer, right? So imagine a case if you had hired a contractor as a SharePoint administrator for your organization. Now, the contractor has left and you don't have any way of ensuring that, ensuring centrally that all the assets to which he had access are, all of that access is already removed, right? You don't have any centralized way, any automated way of controlling that. Now, SharePoint for my organization is through Office 365, which is a cloud or which is a SaaS application. So practically, the contractor can access this over the internet from his home, from his spouse's phone also, right? And if you have not disabled that access on time, that means he can still access that. He can steal information, he can download data, he can delete your entire SharePoint website, and that's the minimal that it can cost, right? So inactive accounts due to improper control during termination. Privilege creep. Now, maybe your organization is very strict in terms of providing you any new access when you join, let's say, the organization, or when you're joining a new department or taking up a new role. They ask you 100 questions, many email approvals have to go through before you get the access. So you feel, wow, we have the good security in place. But nobody's bothered about removing your access, right? So over the years, you keep on accruing these privileges that you no longer require for the job, right? Now imagine a situation where somebody is now joining your team, and that person requires the access, and your boss says that, hey, give this person the same access as you. Now you have all this access that you have acquired over the years, which is not relevant to his job function, yet he gets that access because we have done access copying or access mirroring, right? So that's the situation of privilege creep, right? The third thing is the separation of duties, right? Is there any way that your organization can ensure for sensitive transaction, the task or the steps or the activities to be taken are broken down among different individuals? A simple example obviously can be, let's say you're in a bank, working in a bank, and you're dealing with privileged customers and really high cost transaction. Now, if you're a person who is allowed to initiate a transaction, a transfer, and you're the same person who is allowed to approve that transaction, you basically have the entire control. You can, redirect that transaction to your account. You can modify the account, and nobody will even know, because you're allowed to approve that transaction in authorized fashion, right? So how do you have any controls in place to ensure that this does not happen, causing either a fraud or even a human error, right? Static authentication. Let's say you have the credentials, you have not written your password anywhere, you change your password on time, you have a very strong password, but it's just a password. If somebody steals that password from you and steals your identity, and if they try to access the assets, will they be able to do that just by stealing your password? Or is there any additional security or verification required when you're trying to access, let's say, at least the critical assets of the organization, right? So is there any kind of continuous authentication? Is there any kind of contextual authentication, and not just static authentication that is in place for an employee, for an contractor who's already an authorized user for the organization? Anomaly in behavior, right? Let's say I'm administrator and I basically am working 24/7. Let's say everyone knows that I can, I work in shifts, and today I might be working 9 to 5, tomorrow I might be working, let's say, I don't know, 3 to 11, right? But and I have all the super admin access, right? But today it's showing that I access the system at 9 p.m. from Los Angeles and at 5 p.m. from India. Now that is not practically possible, even though I have the right authentication, I have authenticated myself, and even though I have the right authorization, right? I have the, I have every right to access that information or conduct that transaction. That's still an anomalous behavior, and that needs the controls in place to check these kind of anomalies. Shared and hard-coded credentials. Even today, most of the organizations, you will see that there might be a shared administrative account for a unique server, to which, let's say, a bunch of 10 IT administrators have access to. And what they do is day in and day out, they keep on doing privileged transactions on that. Maybe they delete a database, maybe they clean up files, maybe they clean up logs, and so on and so forth. And one day, by mistake, somebody deletes a wrong database table as part of the cleanup activity. Is there any way that you can trace it back to the actual individual that who did it? I don't think that is possible when you're using a shared admin credentials. I still see a lot of times there is a situation, because these accounts are shared, that people don't tend to change the passwords for them, or they write it down in a password protected Excel and put it in the same server, saying that, hey, only we know, and only we know the password for that, and only we have the access to it, and we know how easy it is to steal passwords that are stored in an encrypted Excel, right? All of us are from the cybersecurity world. There are also situations which are very common where, let's say, there is a program, a web application that is connecting to a database through using a service account, that is allowed to alter tables, that is allowed to delete tables, or even drop databases if required, right? And such transactions programmatically are usually through a properties file. Maybe you're very conscious of security, and instead of putting the password in plain text, you put it in the properties file in a decrypted format. Again, it's very easy to hack such password and decrypt them and use them, right? So it's not the most safe or secure way of conducting or storing these kind of privileged service accounts for applications. Now, we will come back to these examples, right? These are the examples that we have taken to show that all of these activities or all of these issues are caused by an authorized user, an authorized insider who actually have been approved these accesses. They have the complete authorization to take these, conduct these transactions or take these actions, and nobody should actually raise an eyebrow just because they are, using the accesses that have been signed off or approved for them, right? So there's nothing wrong with them, and that's why it's not possible to detect these cases as well. Now, coming to IAM, right? When I started my topic, I mentioned that I still struggle to convince people that IAM is actually falling under the domain of information security, and there are a lot of myths about it. One of them being it's just a bunch of tools to be implemented, right? Or it's just aimed for reducing the help desk administration by automating access provisioning, or helping the administrator not having to get on a call to reset passwords, right? It allows self-service password reset, or it's just about single sign-on, right? It's an IT initiative focused for IT admins. It's not really for regular users. It's a long, winding, expensive program. And the whole idea is to save the help desk administration cost, right? Are they all untrue? Partially, or fully? Many of them are myths, right? Maybe in the past they were a long, winding, and expensive program, but now with a lot of service providers coming up with identity as a service, they're no longer long, winding, and expensive programs. You can just switch your IAM technology at a blink of an eye, right? It's yes, reducing the cost and bringing in automation and improving the efficiency is one of the purpose, but that's not the sole purpose, right? These tools are expensive. There is a capital investment, and I don't think any organization is going to invest in just reducing the help desk administration cost, right? So the primary purpose of IAM as a discipline, right? It's not just a bunch of tools. It's a complete discipline that is a combination of tools, processes. We have seen a lot of customers where they have invested a lot of money in the leading and have had a failed IAM implementation because their processes and policies and procedures were not aligned with the IAM program, or there was sometimes there was no IAM strategy itself. It was not part of the overall security strategy for the organization. IAM needs to be looked at as your first line of defense. If we consider your IDS, IPS, firewalls to be your last line or your perimeter line of defense, right? IAM needs to be looked at as a security and a business initiative and not just as an IT initiative. And these are important things to know. And you will know them when you understand what IAM does as a whole. It's beyond just passwords, single sign-on, and automating provisioning, right? Or it's just beyond automation, right? And it's important that you understand that and align your business policies and security strategies with your IAM initiative, or rather make sure that you have a IAM strategy as part of your overall cybersecurity strategy for it to be successful. Otherwise, you probably are going to invest a lot of money, buy a bunch of latest technologies, and not know how to reap the benefits or how to get the best ROI out of that, right? So just in summary, IAM is not just a bunch of tools. It's a complete framework that controls basically digital identities and how they should access the organizational assets while they are within the organization, while during their life cycle within the organization, right? Now that framework can be made more efficient, automated when combined with the right policies, when aligned with the organization policies, and we get the right technologies which help you automate these things and do not leave them to any manual errors, or they're not inefficient just because it's being done manually today, right? So that's the whole idea about identity and access management as a domain, right? In my career, there are 4 rules of thumbs that I have followed whenever I have looked at IAM, right? I don't look at it as a technology. I don't look at it as a tool. I look at IAM more from the perspective of security and a compliance and audit enabler, right? And to give an analogy, whenever I am talking to people about IAM and how it fits into security, The way I explain is your perimeter security or other cybersecurity areas, which are probably a little more detective in nature, they are like antibiotics, right? Versus IAM is like vitamins. It is your first line of defense, as I mentioned. It strengthens your organizational internally, right? It ensures that everything, only the right controls are in place, and there is no scope for anyone to even do anything by mistake. And if anything is done, it's done as an informed decision. It's done as you're taking the risk and you're signing off on that risk, right? So there is a complete accountability. So I think the technology keeps changing as the digital landscape changes, as there are situation changing, like a pandemic coming in, the demands are changing, but the principles of IAM remain the same, right? It starts with least privilege. We don't need to tell what least privilege is. However, what it means from an insider threat perspective is you cannot exploit or reveal or lose what you don't have. So if you don't have the permissions and you only have the permissions that is required, minimum permissions required to do your job, let's say as a regular employee, then there is no way anyone can even, do anything, even if they steal your identity, right? Because you don't have the privileges to, any additional privileges to cause any damage. Segregation of capabilities, right? So yes, the principle is segregation of duties, but it really boils down to what kind of permissions and accesses you have, and do you have segregation on them, right? The idea is to ensure that you have the solution in place that makes sure that you should not be able to cause impact or damage or a security incident on your own, right? So there is no scope for error, there is no scope for fraud. Authentication, identification, and authorization, right? Trust no one, be it an employee, be it a contractor, be it an external consumer, be it a third-party vendor. Trust no one, be it a CEO of the organization or an intern or a temp in your organization, right? Validate, revalidate, continuous authentication, that is very important, right? It could be seamless through passwordless, going passwordless, but it needs to happen continuously. Accountability and auditing. Let's say for whatever reason, any of your controls fail on the top, or let's say somebody comes back and says that, hey, I know you're not supposed to have this access, but this person is going on leave. So let's say for next 15 days, can you manage his work, as a result of which we give you this access, right? So it's a timed access, it's a known decision that you're taking, right? And if by any mistake something happens as a result of this decision, at least this should be documented with the business justification as to who has access, to what do they have access, and when this access was given, and who approved it, right? So that's about accountability and auditing, making sure that your IAM solution provides you a complete traceability and accountability. With that, I don't think we can do justice to IAM as a whole domain within a 45-minute session, right? And I don't intend to do that. The idea to put up this slide was to say that, hey, IAM is beyond passwords, single sign-on, and federation, right? It's a complete domain which has multiple subdomains, and each domain has multiple technologies and multiple vendors, and it's continuously improving. There are native solutions, IAM solutions, there are hybrid solutions, there are cloud solutions, there is intelligence, there are bots, there are RPAs, and it's just growing, right? What needs to happen ideally is when you implement each of these disciplines with the right technologies and right processes, and provide a complete integrated automated IAM solution, when that is, let's say, married with a right security intelligence system, such as a SIAM system or a user behavioral analytics system, and identify your key analytics, you can actually achieve the seemingly impossible vision of zero trust and passwordless, right? It is possible with identity and access management. What I want to do is go deep dive and take a look back at the examples that we had seen from insider threats perspective and see how specific IAM functionalities can help address those, right? So starting with the inactive accounts, if an employee is leaving and his or her access is not removed, right? What an IAM solution allows you to do is centrally integrate your HR system with the organizational assets into a single portal. So anytime employee is terminated in your HR system, that information is passed on down to the target system. Maybe the person has access to 15 systems out of the thousands of systems that are there in the organization. All of those are automatically notified, and the access is disabled automatically across all those systems through a closed loop remediation, right? It can also trigger event-based termination, such that if I'm a contractor and I have an end date, and if my end date is reaching, it can track that, when this person's end date is reaching, it can request for extension, send reminders, or if the access is not renewed, then it ends again the access for the system person automatically across all the target system to which it has access, right? You don't need to send out individual emails. You don't need to figure out which systems do they have access to. Everything is managed centrally. It also allows for periodic employee verification. Now, employee verification or access reviews or certification is not an unknown concept, but in a traditional world, the way you would do is probably create huge Excel files, right? It takes months to create this data together, consolidated. By the time you're done with data preparation, probably all the access is changed, right? And that access file is no longer applicable. It further takes some time for the managers or the reviewers or the right authorities to validate that access and come back and say that yes, this is good to go. Now, if I as a manager 100 employees and their access to 1,000 systems, I'm probably going to do rubber stamping. I'm probably just going to see, yeah, it looks, I know this person, this is approved, right? I'm probably not even looking at it. What an IAM system will allow you to do, first of all, is kill all the time that you require in data gathering, because all the data exists in real time centrally. It then allows you to actually do very selective access reviews, right? You don't really need to validate a regular employee's access to his timesheets system to submit his timesheets. That's a given. As an employee, that's his right. You don't want to review or recertify that access. But you definitely want to validate access of the employee who is acting as a timesheet administrator in that timesheet system, right? So be selective and focus your attention on critical systems or critical accesses. And that is possible automatically through an IAM system centrally. Privilege creep, right? So whenever you're changing jobs or you're transferring or you're converting from a contractor to employee, the IAM system can actually trigger a change which is based on a rule or attribute or a role change, where it says that, hey, this person as part of this new department or new job function or new location needs this access and no longer requires this access. And accordingly, the system, which is now connected with all your organizational assets, can go and act and remove that access automatically and give the required access, right? It can also trigger event-based access recertification. That is, let's say, if I'm changing my job and changing, let's say, my whole department from finance to HR, it can actually trigger on-demand access recertification to my new manager saying that, hey, this person is joining your department, here is the access, can you please review it, right? It can also provide you automated time-bound and access requests as well as firefighter access. What we mean by time-bound access request is, let's say everything is taken care of based on the rules and roles you've been given access, but you still require certain additional access, which you need to request for. You can centrally go into the IAM system, request for that access, all the approvals get captured, centrally audited, accounted for, Once the request is approved, you automatically get access provision into the target system that is integrated with your IAM system, right? And you can actually associate a time with that, saying that provide this access only for another month, as a result of which the system will automatically remove your access from the target system whenever that date is reached, right? Similarly, you can put in controls where you say that, hey, these are developers. They don't require access to the production database for deployment. Just give them access to the development environment. But during the go live or during the deployment, for the limited duration, they can actually require for a firefighter access. They get provision access just for that duration, and then the access gets automatically removed. That is actually possible with an IAM system, and that's where the strength of the IAM system lies, right? Separation of duties. Again, IAM comes inbuilt with preventive and detective segregation of duty, violation detection, right? So what I mean by preventive SOD is, let's say if I'm requesting for an access X, and the organization says that when you have access X, you're not supposed to have access Y, and I already have access Y, right? When I'm requesting that, the system will actually throw an error or a warning saying that, hey, you cannot request for access X because you already have access Y, right? And I can actually configure the system to either not allow you to proceed further or allow you to proceed further, but you need to capture a business justification, probably go for an additional level of approval, or it triggers an additional access certification and so on and so forth, right? Similarly, we can even do periodic detective scans and identify, it will highlight all the violations that have happened. They can be periodically recertified, and you can see that, yes, we allowed this violation in the past. We are aware of it. We had taken that decision, but it was only for that period. Now it is no longer required. Please go ahead and revoke this access, right? So your IAM system ensures that if anything that was missed part of the whole manual process, it is now brought to your attention. Either it is automatically controlled, or you are forced to take a look at it and recertify it. The other things that we talked about was static authentication, right? So again, this is a known thing because, as I said, IAM, everyone thinks it's about MFA and it's about SSO, right? So IAM system do provide you multi-factor authentication support. They also provide you continuous authentication. So if you are already logged in, and let's say there is no session timeout, right? So you've done all your multi-factor authentication, or 3 levels of authentication, you're logged in, and now your session is valid for 8 hours, and somebody steals that session at that point. There's no point that you had the multi-factor authentication. So can the system periodically, ask you to re-authenticate yourself? That is possible with an IAM solution, right? It can also allow you to go passwordless, where it is no longer, a simple case can be biometrics, right? Nobody can steal your password. It is something that you have, or it's something that you are, and only you can authenticate yourself, and nobody else can do it on behalf of you, right? So that addresses the problem of static authentication as well. Anomaly in behavior, we can actually configure contextual authentication or adaptive or risk-based authentication. What we mean by that is we may put in rules that say that, hey, this person has this access. However, he is supposed to access it from these locations, and typically this is the time. And if anything outside of this, you can actually reject the access, or you can actually prevent the person from accessing the system. It can even integrate backend with your other IAM systems and even remove the access for the person if we feel that's it's a higher risk, right? The person is trying to access a very critical system probably. We can also integrate, or some of the IAM solution have the inbuilt capability for threat analytics and risk intelligence as well, where they can monitor and they can keep track of behavioral patterns and define what is a normal behavior versus an abnormal behavior, and act to prevent the person from accessing the organizational asset there onwards. Shared and hard-coded credentials, and this is where your entire PAM solution or privileged access management solutions come into picture, right? Something that I was not aware of, and that's a new domain for me that I learned about recently, and I was like, wow, oh, is this even possible, right? Where we are saying that as a system administrator, you don't even need to know your password, right? We store your password. Whenever you need to access it, you go ahead, you access it. Once your use is done, we will rotate the password. So you no longer know the new password, or you don't even need to access that password at all. You just connect to the system. Let's say you want to do remote login into a Windows server. All you do is use our PAM solution and you will be automatically connected to the RDB solution. You no longer have to enter any admin credentials, right? An alternate way is privilege elevation, or even just-in-time provisioning, right? By privilege elevation, what we mean is maybe I don't even have a privileged account separately. I just have one single account or one single identity. And just when I need to access it, I basically, just in time, my privileges are elevated. I'm able to do my activity. The whole activity is recorded, audited, and when I'm done, my privilege are reduced back to a regular user's privileges, right? So you no longer have the privileges as static privileges assigned to you that you keep with you anytime 24/7. They are just elevated when you require to act on certain things, right? Or things like just-in-time provisioning, which is a newer concept where we are saying, why even create privileged accounts, or why even create privileged accesses? Just when you need it, create or provision the account, an administrative in time. Once the activity is done, remove that account and again audit all of that activity, right? Or when it comes to hard-coded credentials, a PAM solution allows you to not have the application programs store the password statically within their properties files, but during the runtime, they can actually fetch these credentials from a vault or a secret management system, fill in those credentials, and that's how the program runs. It happens on runtime. And it's not stored in the application's code anywhere, right? In either encrypted or in plain text format. So that's how the typical incident threat scenario or examples that we have seen. And it's a small attempt at looking at how IAM can help address these scenarios, right? And you must have seen that there is a lot more to IAM, and you really need to deep dive into how exactly these things will work and play around with those technology, and it's pretty interesting. But yes, at a high level, they can definitely address your insider threats. But technology is not everything, right? I always believe that it needs to be a defense in depth approach. You cannot avoid awareness. You need to have education for your employees as well as non-employees, in terms of social engineering, in terms of best practices, your security policies. You need to ensure that your business processes are aligned. You have done proper asset classification, and you have controls in place for different types of assets, and depending on what their risks are, depending on what kind of data they're accessing, and you have proper governance and control procedures in place as well. Technology is just a mean of enabling all of this only after awareness and procedures are in place. Otherwise, as I said, that you might invest a lot of money into either an IAM technology or into detective technologies or any other cybersecurity tools, and it may not be as effective if you still have employees and if you still have procedures that are broken. You cannot automate something that is broken. You cannot there's nothing much you can do when there is an employee who really intends to act on its privileges and he's a malicious insider, right? So things can only help you mitigate the risk, but they cannot really resolve everything. There needs to be a right balance of all the controls in place, right? And the good news is, looks like all the organizations are realizing the importance or the impact of insider threats. And as Gartner says, by 2023, 60% of large organizations will have a well-defined incident response for insider threats, which is today less than 20%, right? And that's a big jump, and that is required as well, right? In summary, what we saw is insider threats are real and the impact is too big to ignore. Negligent insiders are the biggest concern, so just trust no one, right? Be them insider, be them external users, just validate and revalidate and authenticate again. Prevention is the key, else it might be too late. So we still find organizations which do not have an IAM strategy, and they believe that their perimeter security measures are sufficient, and they may be sufficient in cases, but it takes a long time, a lot of times to detect an incident, especially an insider threat incident, right? There have been cases where it takes months to even realize that there was a breach happening. And by that time, terabytes of data has been transferred and, there is a financial blackmail that is happening. So it might be too late. So better to act and better prevent it, or try to prevent it, than just rely on the detection technologies. An IAM security program is as important as a perimeter security program. You have to have an IAM strategy in your cybersecurity strategy for better controls, better auditing, regulatory compliance, better security from insider threats, and automation is a given, but that's not the priority when you look at IAM. And combine technology with education, policies, and procedures. Just tools are not sufficient. They are not magic. You have to design them, you have to study, you have to understand, ensure you've done all the homework. Only then an IAM program can be. I just want to say that you guys can catch me on LinkedIn. I will share the presentation as well. And would definitely like to, if you guys want to know more details about IAM, how we can achieve this, feel free to drop by, feel free to drop a message. LinkedIn is the best way to reach. And it's a topic that is very close to my heart. So I would spend all the time required to ensure that, you guys know the importance of IAM. So thank you so much for listening in and taking out the time.